Hi, my name's Dalton Ben. I want to talk about juvenile delinquency and specifically property crimes, and even more specific than that, auto thefts, where juveniles have been involved. So I want to give a little bit of background about myself, so you know that why I can talk about the things that I'm talking about, how I'm qualified. Problems in recent years that I've seen locally and nationally through the news, the juvenile justice system, and proposed solution, and how I think we should fix it. And then at the end, we'll summarize it up. A little bit about myself. 32 years old, married, four kids. I've been a police officer for 12 years now. Uh, I've been in the military for 15 years in the reserves as a military police officer. I've been to numerous trainings, conducted numerous investigations, including property crimes, including auto thefts, many of them involving juveniles, and of course, many of them being other types of crimes too, narcotics, assaults, murders, sexual assaults. Sometimes all of them have involved juveniles. So, specifically going back to talking about auto thefts and juveniles, it's happening everywhere. It's not just something that's happening in larger agencies or jurisdictions. It's happening in small towns. It's happening in our town. Um, I can remember locally, I have worked over 20 car thefts in a 3 month period. So back in 2023, we had a string of car thefts happening in the summer months. School's out, and uh, we had just a rash of car break-ins and car thefts. It was probably, 23 or something like that. And it turned out to be all the same group of juveniles that was committing all these crimes. Other parts of the state and the country experience the same problem. So in St. Louis, I know that it's a constant problem. In 2024, September 2024, there was a bunch of car break-ins and car thefts. I know in one case, a group of teenagers, ages like 12 to 16, there was like four of them, stole a car, crashed into a utility pole while fleeing the cops. They were released back to guardians, and within 12 hours, I know at least one of them was rearrested for stealing another car. So that's what I want to talk about. Big problem, as I see it, is a lack of accountability and punishment, and that's just going back to the constraints that we have in the juvenile justice system at this point in time. Many times, juveniles who are accused of crimes are released back to guardians. There's a point system that they use when assessing juvenile offenders and whether or not they are eligible for incarceration into a juvenile detention facility. And I understand that no, we can't lock up every juvenile who commits a crime, and I don't think that we should, but especially for part one crimes, crimes like auto theft and burglary and crimes involving narcotic sales. I think that there should be uh, some leeway there, especially whenever we have these chronic offenders. Um, a big thing that I want to stretch is that people see property crimes as nonviolent crimes because they don't directly affect somebody, but you also have to take into account that that is somebody's vehicle that's being stolen, and they may or may not have insurance. I know it's required to have insurance, but again, insurance is expensive. Times are always hard. Sometimes people might be out of a job that could be their only means of transportation for them, their kids. Uh, and most of the time, if that's the case and they don't have insurance, if their vehicle's stolen and crashed, they're just out of luck. Um, Especially with juveniles, there's only so much restitution that can go into place, and even that takes a long time before they can get another vehicle. So, yeah, one of the things I would propose is harsher penalties and more leniency in lawmakers' favors and law enforcement's favor for incarceration of juveniles who do commit serious property crimes like auto theft. More resources and support for the police. I'll say that all the time. While we do have more tools, we are starting to see an uptick in officer recruitment here in the past few years. We could always use more support. There's always policies in place that restrict law enforcement and laws in place and deals that go on that make it very hard for us to do our job. And then at some point, you got to hold parents accountable. I don't want to say it's everyone's fault for how their child acts or behaves and the crimes they commit, but when you have parents that are uninvolved or uncaring and negligent in how their child acts and they go out and habitually victimize people, I think there should be something in place. So if we look in DC just in the last year, whenever the National Guard was activated there for the crime crackdown, they had a giant drop in crime of all types. People are reporting better living conditions. People aren't afraid to go outside. I think it's a perfect example of what we can do and how we can, bolster law enforcement and be harder on crime, and that it actually does work. So holding juveniles accountable regardless of age, again, it's hard to certify, I guess, a juvenile as an adult when it does come down to them committing certain crimes. Most of the time, you only see this with violent felonies like murder or rape. But I think we should be able, especially closer to the legal age that they are, we should have more leniency, I guess, in holding them accountable or certifying them as adults for serious property crimes. And then again, like I said, supporting law enforcement through common sense laws and policies. I think in recent years we've had a lot of really bad uh, laws come out that restrict law enforcement from doing their job. Same thing. A lot of agencies have a lot of restrictive policies, no pursuit policies, or very restrictive pursuit policies. And I think law enforcement's just been under a microscope for the last couple of years and have been getting a lot of bad press simply for doing their job. I think we need to swing the pendulum back the other way and we'll start allowing people to do their job so that way we can keep our neighborhoods safe. So, in summary, I explained my background, my interest in the juvenile justice system and crime. Again, I'm a father. I have four kids, and I want them to grow up to be good people. And I'm going to make sure in my part that they're not out there doing crime, and if they are, that they're going to be punished and held accountable. And at the same time, I want them to feel safe going outside, and I want to feel safe for them to go outside and ride their bikes down the street like I did when I was a kid. Um, I talked about my experience and, a case study, at least in the St. Louis area, some kind of local, um, how other people like DC were dealing with their crime and how the crime stats looked after that. And pretty big crimes again, not just violent crimes. They do have far-reaching effects. Uh, Pending any questions, this concludes my brief. Thank you for your time.